Welcome back. We're here to look ahead to Saturday afternoon's Premier League match between Arsenal and Stoke at the Emirates. Barnes will start with Arsenal. Before the international break, they picked up a 1-0 win at Newcastle.
It wasn't the most convincing win ever. It was one-sided, completely one-sided. There was only ever one team in it, especially Newcastle. Got the early red card for Mitrovic, a silly red card. They were very ill-disciplined in that match, Newcastle were. But even before that, when it was 11 versus 11, Arsenal were the better side. They were putting under pressure. It was pretty much one-way traffic then as well. That just exacerbated that for the rest of the game. And it was they were completely dominant. Krul was the man of the match for Newcastle, despite ending up on the losing team. But at the same time, Arsenal needed an own goal to win that match, and they'll be disappointed considering how much they dominated, that they didn't create more chances than they managed to, because there's no doubt that they deserved to win the match. They should have won it more comfortably considering how one-sided it was. They couldn't really find a way through the Newcastle defence. They defended very well, as they did against Manchester United the week before that. As I say, Krul had a really good game, and then for the match to be decided on a deflected own goal, it will be disappointing because Wenger will want to see more creativity from his side, especially with the likes of Walcott was given a chance to start up front. He should have got a couple of goals. I personally think he's better in from the right. I know he prefers in the central role, but every time he starts in that central role, he doesn't seem to do it for me. I certainly don't think he's the answer to Giroud not being the man to fire them to the title. Walcott's runs in from the right for me always look a lot more dangerous. It's sort of England in midweek. He was very good against San Marino when he came off the bench, scored 2 goals like that. So for me, I think he's better from the right. I think Giroud's better in the middle, but still, those two, I don't think they've got the firepower or the creativity to really unlock a defence like Newcastle's when they pack men behind the ball as they did.
I think that's the big problem, isn't it, for Arsenal? The fans, they're the only team in the top 5 European leagues not to sign an outfield player. All they signed, before the deadline day was Petr Cech and goal, who, good signing for it. You feel they probably did need a more experienced goalkeeper, but to not sign any outfield players, very disappointing. I think we've touched on it so many times before about whether Giroud is good enough, whether Walcott's good enough to sort of lead your strike force, and I think in terms of those forward areas, all the players behind the striker and sort of out wide as well, I think they are strong enough there. I mean, Oxlade-Chamberlain's really impressed me of late. You say Walcott's impressed you out on the right, but I think it's more in it's that defensive midfield area for me. I know Coquelin came in last season, and for me, he still impresses me when I watch him play. Coquelin, he's really good at breaking up the play, but you look at the other players they've got there. I mean, Arteta and Flamini as their sort of 2 other sort of holding midfielders. That's just not good enough for me. I think they needed to maybe get really of Flamini and bring in another sort of defensive midfielder there, because for me they are light there, and unless they really need someone like that. I think you look at the other teams, they really have that stopper there, and although Coquelin does impress, you wonder if he's going to be able to keep up this form over a whole season. Maybe he can, but if not, then you feel they probably needed someone else there and a striker as well. I know the striker is the one that all the Arsenal fans want, but they couldn't get that, and to have such a quiet window. I mean, they've still got a great squad, Arsenal, and you probably say if they can go on one of those winning runs and get to the top and maybe hold their position, they might have a chance, but you just feel it's a bit more same old story really with them. They haven't quite done enough, and their squad doesn't look as good as City or Chelsea. I know Chelsea have had a bad start, but it just doesn't look as good as the other teams for me.
Yeah, for me it was that striker role, the most important one. If they were able to get in a world-class striker, I would have had them pushing for the title. I think Cech, as you mentioned, it was a really good signing. I think he'll get them quite a few points this season, but they needed something more. To only bring in Cech, I think will prove to be a mistake. I don't see them challenging for the title now. I think one thing that might be worrying Arsene Wenger at the moment is their home form, because they're usually so strong at the Emirates. They go through on these winning runs where they seem unbeatable at home, but they've only won one of their last 6 now, stretching back to last season at home. They failed to score in 5 of those without a goal this season, without a win this season in front of their own fans. That needs to improve. They got a tricky run coming up. They got Manchester United, Everton and Tottenham in the next 3 home games. Bayern Munich thrown in there as well in the Champions League. So they're going to need to improve that. This is a good chance to do that. They've got a fantastic record against Stoke, a better home record against Stoke than against any other team in their history at the moment. So they'll be confident of improving that and getting that first win under the belts, but that is important because their home form is usually always the bedrock. If they are going to put a title challenge in, they need a really solid home form, because well, obviously Chelsea lost to Crystal Palace, but Chelsea are going to have a good one, and City certainly are going to have a good one this season.
Yeah, their home results haven't been great so far. That loss to West Ham and then the draw with Liverpool, but I mean certainly Stoke here. I think Stoke will provide a stern test because they're unbeaten away from home this season. They got 2 draws, came back at Spurs, didn't they, from 2-0 down there, then drew at Norwich as well. But I think Stoke, it's kind of felt like a pretty good start to the season. There's a lot of positivity over the transfer window and all the signings they made, but they're still waiting for their first league win. They've lost both their home games this season. The first game of the season at Liverpool, that was, they matched Liverpool in that game and then lost to that Coutinho stunner. But then last time out against West Brom, it was a bit of an odd game, wasn't it? There was the 2 red cards. They were down to 9 men very early. I think it was before half time, wasn't it, in that game? So it was always an uphill battle. And then Rondon scored in first half injury time, and from then, I think Stoke did pretty well to just keep it at 1. To be honest, when you're down to 9 men like that, I know when you're at home, if you're at home and you can put 10 men behind the ball, you shouldn't be able to. You might be able to stop the opposition scoring, but with 9 men, I would have expected West Brom to go and get more goals, but they couldn't do that. So a 1-0 defeat there with 9 men isn't too bad, I don't think.
Yeah, you mentioned their signings there, and I think that's largely the reason there is still a bit of a feel-good factor against Stoke, as you say, winless in 4 games at the start of the season, but to have got the likes of Shaqiri particularly in during the summer, it's such a big coup for the club. I think. I still think they're going to have a good season. They've got a decent run coming up. They've had a fairly tricky start. Obviously, Arsenal, not too many fans will be expecting much from this game considering their record at the Emirates against Arsenal. But they've got Leicester, Bournemouth, Aston Villa, Watford and Newcastle in 5 of their 6 games after this. So they'll fancy picking up a few points in that run. And if they can get themselves up towards mid-table, I can see them going on and pushing for Europe this season.
Yeah, certainly. I think there's the one thing with Stoke is that you say there's things like that, but there's so many other sides who kind of feel that way that might be able to push and sort of upset Liverpool and Spurs in those sort of 5th and 6th places. Swansea have had a great start. Palace, they're up there as well. So I think it should be really interesting seeing those teams really compete for those to try and get into the top 6 like that. But what's your score prediction for this game?
Well, as I mentioned, Arsenal's record against Stoke at home, they've won all 7 Premier League encounters, 13 in a row in all competitions, which is more than they've ever managed against any other club. I think it's going to be 14 personally. I can't see Stoke getting anything out of this, so I'm going to go for a fairly comfortable 2-0 Arsenal win, I think.
2-0, yeah, I completely agree. I just can't see. I think Arsenal, given this break, I think they should be able to come back fit and firing, and they'll be desperate for that first home win, so I think they'll win 2-0 as well. So both see Arsenal winning this one 2-0. Thanks for joining us.